Quackadoodle, what is up, fellow birds of the spiral? It's your friend and pal Fearsome here, back with another video, and in this particular video, I'm going to be talking about all things Buccaneer. Now, I have a serious question about this series in general. You may have noticed in the last video, the Musketeer video, that it was a lot longer. It was like close to an hour, but I put everything where I talked a little bit more about each individual piece of gear. And I'm thinking, hey, maybe that's too long for you guys. So I'm going to see if you guys like the shorter version better. So be sure to comment down below if you prefer the shorter version or the longer, more detailed version. And I will make my decision for the next set of guides I will make for this summer. So that being said, let's get right into the video. Alright, so we're going to have a look at all the hats together. The main idea with gear in this game in general is the abilities, not necessarily the stats. So I have a lot of Assassin Strike gear, a lot of Valor Fortress gear, Revive, and Walk in Darkness, as well as a couple pieces of gear that give like accuracy, and somewhere I have a piece of gear. I have this right here that gives Triton's Course, very situational. It is mostly about the powers, though. So we'll have a look at these pieces of gear now. This one here comes Tower of Mu Manchu. Now, there is a level 65 version, a level 60 version, and a level 55 version. But what's important here is that it gives Super Strike and Vicious Charge. And then you have this piece of gear, a Revive. Now, be sure to balance your powers, okay? As far as your powers go, later on I'll show you like different power setups. Try and get whatever pieces of gear that give you the power necessary for those setups. Usually it's 2 forts, 2 assassins, and 2 hides. That's pretty standard. But yeah, let's get back to the hats. All right, so this one here, as I mentioned before, Triton's Course, is pretty much only good in battles where there are only melee units. Maybe in a Buccaneer versus Buccaneer matchup, or if you're in a 3v3 where everyone's using like all melee companions and all melee pirates, it could also be good. And speaking of situational gear, here's another one. This one has Call to Arms on it. Hyperlane's hat. Now, a lot of the gear you can get, hats, boots, and coats, also drops in 4-group loot chests, or even 2 sometimes, depending on where you're farming. But I got this one here in I think I got it by fighting El Caboing a bunch of times with like 4 pirates. It's like some vortex in Santa Polo, but you can pretty much find it anywhere in Coal Ranch. But the important thing is it does give Call to Arms. It's pretty much for when you don't have any companions with a buff, or you don't have a privateer on your team. You may put this hat on and you may use that instead. 10-round buff is really, really good. Now, it may not seem as powerful, but what's important for a Buccaneer, more important than anything else, is his accuracy in many cases, especially when he's in Tide, because when you combine Call to Arms with Turn the Tide 2, you get basically the same effect as Zeal accuracy-wise, and that's really nice for Buccaneers. So the next hat I have is just another Valor Fortress of my many Valor Fortresses. Helm of the Valiant. Don't stress if you don't get this, because there are a total of 5 fortresses you can get, Valor Fortresses, and you just need 2, really. And here we go, an Ashishi's Great Helm. I mentioned Assassin Strikes, most powerful ability in the game as far as good solid damage. 800 damage plus bleeding for 2 turns, so it does 2 different types of damages, and it's very powerful. I like to have as many as I can. You can get a total of 4 Assassin Strikes as Buccaneer. Alright, well that covers hats. Now we'll have a look at coats. Now, same thing with coats as far as the Group 4 chests. You can get a lot of this gear. This includes this Assassin Strike robe, the Mighty Warriors robes, Valor armor, probably going to be useful in 4v4. I haven't really used it much yet, but I just like having it. Valor's armors are just super fun because they absorb chains very well, particularly blade storms and double taps. They prevent them from criticaling and blade storming and double tapping onto other people or yourself. So it's good for that reason. Also allows you to have a decent amount of protection on while enjoying the benefits of Elusive or Turn the Tide with relatively low risk. So It's nice to have, particularly for classes like Musketeer and Privateer. Uh, and of course, you have this one from the Tower of Fu Manchu, same deal, 65, 55 as far as levels go. But if it gives resist charge and Leviathan's Call, it's still pretty good. I don't use this piece of gear much, so if you don't get it, don't stress about it. Revived, there are like 3 different revive robes. Any of them will do. The Bazaar has one of them as well, but likely you'll get this one dropped pretty quickly in like Aquila or something like that. Another Veiler's armor. Once again, this is super common drop in Aquila. Uh, just farm in a group of 4 if you can. If you don't get it immediately, that is. This here jacket, I got it by farming Cane, Sundering Strike, Triton's Chorus. Triton's Chorus is very situational, as I mentioned earlier. Same thing here with the Army Bandolier. And that covers all the coats that I have. Alright guys, now we're going to have a look at boots. There are 3 different versions of boots to give Walk in Darkness. Once again, the power is what's most important. I got this from a bundle called the Empire Bundle. Really good bundle because it does also give a Revive hat as well. And it does give a very good companion with the highest range of movement called Naziga. I'll be discussing her later in this video. But it's worth your money, especially when you get it on sale for 20 bucks, which happens every now and then. Um, Definitely better than farming for it. But you could also buy the Bazaar quite easily, um, or at least a pair of boots to give the exact same power. You get these boots too. They usually drop when you're farming, when you're questing, actually, I should say, in Cool Ranch. Very easy to get. So, a Walk in Shadows, or Walk in Darkness, I should say, boots provide that hide that help you get past Hold the Line and help you time out other people's buffs and stuff. Super nice to have. And of course, the double damage afterwards is really nice. Uh, yeah, we have these boots here too. Super Strike, Leviathan's Call. I actually don't use these much anymore, but they're pretty decent. I could see them being used in a Buck Mirror match every now and then. But once again, hide is better for getting past Hold the Line and stuff like that, so I don't use it much. Same thing, level 65, 55, as well as the 65 one. As long as it gives Super Strike and Leviathan's Call, it basically fits the task. Don't stress if you don't get it, though. Here we have, once again, Triton's Chorus, situational power, as I mentioned with the hats and the coats. Same deal. Alright, so now we're on to weapons. This weapon here, best weapon ever for 3v3s and 4v4s in particular. It may not be quite as good 1v1s in many situations, but what's really good is that one chain leads to another, and that sometimes that leads to another or another critical, which leads to another chain. The point is, any extra chains you can get often lead to a full chain more often than not. So follow through is one of those chains. It's basically a guaranteed relentless, but it can also hit somebody who's not necessarily targeted initially. So it's a little bit like Bladestorm, but also a little bit like Relentless, but guaranteed. It's quite interesting power, but really good to have for the reasons I just mentioned. More along the 1v1 lines, or if you can't get this weapon for whatever reason, you can get the Furia's Flame Barge. I probably said that wrong, but Supercharge gives the double movement, the critical strike, and the reduced accuracy. Which are also really good perks of Vicious Charge, minus, of course, the fact this is a supercharge, actually. It doesn't have the Glancing Blow, though. This weapon does have a pretty decent amount of damage, so it's also a pretty viable option. You can get it in the crown shop for, about 10 bucks worth of crowns, or 5 bucks if it's on sale, if either the weapon is on sale or the crowns are on sale, so make smart purchases when you can. That's what I'm saying there. Here's another weapon that's all right. Now, the reason I say it's all right is because most of the time it's actually banned in a lot of tournaments. A lot of 1v1s you'll be doing in the Spar Chamber, most people ban it. Yeah, it's banned half the time. It's only useful for ranked PvP. That's all I can say. And if you're struggling versus, something in PvE. Having this is really good. But if you're struggling in PvE, then the only way you could really get this weapon is if you boosted, because PvE, the AI in this game, I rarely find people who are that bad at the game. So you had to boost it in order to get this if you're struggling with AI, which is sad, but it is what it is. Boosting happens every single day. It's nothing I can do about it. Alright, enough with that. Let's skip to another champion weapon that is not banned, surprisingly. It gives an ability called Assassin's Gloom. The main reason I think this weapon is probably not banned is because it gives an ability that is already in the game. But the fact that Buccaneers have it means that if they're facing a swashbuckler, for example, the swashbuckler could just go into hide, and you could poison them while they're in hide, and they have to put a fort on while they're in hide, causing them to waste resources. Now, if you get a super, that's really going to make the swashbucklers cry. It's really nasty power to have, a very underrated weapon. So, moving right along, this weapon here, the Craven Blade, pretty much only a good option if you can't get any of the other weapons I mentioned. It does get Blade Storm, which if you get Blade Storm 5, it can boost your damage by a little bit, so it's better than nothing and better than some of the other options I'm about to mention. There's this one here, Vengeance Strike, which, you already have Vengeance Strike 3, which does the stun. Having one more Vengeance Strike, I think it gives you, more critical chance or more chance to stun. But the problem is I've tested Vengeance Strike 5 out, and it seems to stun just about as much as a regular Vengeance Strike. So either the game is bugged, which it does have a lot of bugs, or I'm just extremely unlucky. So, I mean, if Vengeance Strike just works for you, then, this weapon may be a great option, but I thought I would mention it. Hold the line, Gargoyle Shield. It gives you a little extra dodge when people run into you. So it's just a little perk. The other weapons I mentioned, they're better for the most part. We have the Dragon Axe of Doom, does some burn damage, gives an extra turn the tide, is pretty decent. And that pretty much covers all the weapons. Alright, here I am at the eye patch part of the video. Now there is an eye patch. I don't know why they bury this eye patch in a place that's hard to find, but there are 2 new eye patches added to the Crown Shop in recent years. The patch of St. Fido and also the patch of St. Fido, level 65 version. Obviously, you want to get this version for a couple of extra crowns. Gives some weapon power, accuracy, dodge. The main reason you may want to get this is because it's better than nothing. So that's literally the only reason. But what is actually better than that, if you can get it to drop, is this here eye patch called Schemer's Eye Patch. Now what I hear is that this patch of the Cage Beast does not drop anymore. It's also a viable option if you happen to have it. I used to farm Xena for this, and I got it. I used to think it was better than Assassin Strike. I don't know how I got that idea. I guess I was just really bad at that time, but I guess I just didn't think it was worth to farm this. But I eventually got this thanks to Second Chance Chest in Rook in the Trafalgar dungeon. So I'm glad I have it now. Super glad. Alright guys, here's a look at the totems. Another Assassin Strike, another Revive. You can get this at Bazaar. Here's Super Strike Vicious Charge. Again, powers are what's important here, so if anything drops that gives basically the same thing, it's just as good for the most part. There's a very small difference. Now there are 2 other totems that do give Valor's Fortress. I prefer the Stormzilla Egg. As far as having that, because it can be transferred to all pirates. In fact, I have it on my swashbuckler right now. But there is also another totem. I think it's called Special Branch Badge or something like that. You might look it up later. Just go to the Pirate101 Central Wiki. By the way, guys, if you want to know where to get any of the gear in this guide, just go to the link down below in the description. Pirate101 Central Wiki. It is an official Pirate101 endorsed site. website. And basically, you can use the wiki there, type in whatever piece of gear you want to know more about, or whatever ability you want to know more about. It'll even tell you what gear has the ability and where to farm it. Um, so you just type in whatever information you need into the wiki, and you find what you want there. Great tool, highly recommend using it. So that covers totems. We're on to charms, and it turns out the special branch badge is actually a charm, not a totem, so you're going to have to find whatever totem that is, or just use the Stormzilla egg, which I prefer the Stormzilla egg anyway. But we are on to charms now, and the special branch badge gives just another Veiler's fortress. It's super nice to have. You can get the right hand charm. I actually don't use this very often because Leviathan's Call is not all that good. It's okay. So an extra vicious charge, Leviathan's Call. That's all that means to me. This here got it from the Bazaar. Revive. A lot of revive gear at the Bazaar, and that pretty much covers what my charms are. Now you can get Sprocket Key, like I mentioned in both the Privateer guide and the Musketeer guide, and you can try to make that work, but it's a bit tricky. So yeah, those are the charms I have. For rings, this ring here is really nice to have, but don't worry if you can't get it, because it is actually not a very common drop. This does not drop in group chest. I literally farmed, I forgot, I think it was the bird with no name for this ring right here. Walk in Darkness. But it is pretty nice to have because having double hide, particularly versus musketeers, really does help. So I use this setup quite often. But some other options are yet another Veiler's Fortress. This is also very hard to farm and get. You could also get this here Brain Thief band from the Tower of Fu Manchu, or you can go to the bazaar and you can buy a revive ring. So depending on what other pieces of gear you drop, make a decision on what ring. But all four of the rings that I mentioned are very viable for Buccaneer. Alright guys, something I forgot to mention in my swashbuckler guide as well. Let's talk about the hybrid Shooty setup. I'm not sure if I even have the weapon for it anymore, but it is based, well, I have a low level version of basically the concept. So if you go Stabby Shooty as far as weapon goes, there are a couple of problems you face as Buccaneer, mostly in team PvP. Now there are a lot of companions that give Quick Draw 3 or True Grit 3, and a lot of the times you can have your Buccaneer basically stunned or chained to death because he has a burst fire, which triggers reactionary epics from musketeer units. So it is detrimental to a Buccaneer to have a shooty, stabby weapon. I did used to run that, and let me tell you, it was a bit of a nightmare. Now you can make it work if you are good, but just realize that it's a troll setup. If you see anyone else doing it, they're doing it because they just want to have fun and they already know they're going to win. Pretty much the reason why you do it. But for Swashbuckler, there is actually a benefit in 1v1 in particular, because the Haywire shot, while hidden, does a lot of damage. And it ignores, let's see, this power here, the Leviathan's Call, and other Buccaneer protections, time protections. So there is a purpose for it, but most of the times it's pretty bad, and that's the reason why I don't really include it much in my guides. Alright, now we're on to actually what's the most important part of this video, which is pets. I love pets. Guys, if you need pets, come to Realm Avery Morphington every Friday at 5 p.m. Central Time. That is my current streaming schedule for Pet Morph giveaways. Now that may change in the future, and I'll try and let you know when it does. You know, I love, you know, hanging out with the community and helping them get good pets. So that's what I do when I stream. That being said, what do you want out of good Buccaneer pets? The two essentials are Elusive and then Relentless. Elusive is more important than Relentless. That extra dodge and the extra movement and everything is crucial for Buccaneer. Next, you may go for a a Rally or a Rainbow Bless, or you may go for a Vicious Charge. There's just a lot of options. Now, I also have this Turn the Tide 2 pet with Bladestorm and Elusive, a Rally, and a Soul Reaver. A lot of people really love this pet. Now, Turn the Tide 5 is a little bit overrated. Same with Blade 5. Um, but I have the pet nonetheless, and a lot of people like to morph. So if any of these pets are pets you want to morph with, or any of the other pets that you know about that I have, most of my good pets are on my privateers and my musketeers. Just drop by. I'd be glad to hang out with you, answer any questions, morph pets. You know, it's just what I enjoy doing. So that pretty much covers pets. Alright guys, just like the gear, the companions are super important. You have to know what you're going to use your companions for. You can set your Ratbeard or your Toro or your Contessa any way you want, but set it in a way that makes sense for how you're going to use them. Now Ratbeard generally works very well as basically a very tanky companion that blocks charging companions. He has a reduce, he has a knockback, he has an extra super strike, he has his Triton Song to make him more tanky, and he has a lot of other great stuff. Like he has 8 epics, a total of 8 epics, which he can do a lot of stuff with. Now for Buccaneer, I like to do Repel Borders 3, First Strike 3, also Hold the Line 2. Um, Dodge is not something that's super important to reduce, but some people do like to have the Hold the Line 3 instead. Here's a quick look at the other stuff that I gave him. Now, I'm not sure why I went Agile, another Agile. I think I meant to go Strength, but basically all the same talents, except instead of Agile, I would actually go for Strength. So that's my Ratbeard setup. All right, next we'll have a look at El Toro, one of my favorite companions for countering swashbucklers in particular. And the main purpose of having him is his esprit de corps. The dodge and the accuracy is super nice to have, but also the fact that he has First Strike 3, he has Relentless 2, and Riposte you can give him, and this is the setup that I definitely recommend. Some people, they like to go extra Riposte instead, or sometimes they go for Riposte 3, First Strike 3. That works as well. I prefer to have the chains, but that's a preference thing. Whatever makes you win. But here's a quick look at how I have mine set up, and this is exactly the way I suggest you set yours up as well. Now, some of the other perks that he has is he has Alert, which makes it so he takes half damage on traps and stuff. So that's also another perk. He can jump as well, so that means he can get over obstacles, particularly in ranked PvP. This might be helpful. So that's a quick rundown of El Toro. Now, do I use him in team PvP very often? Barely ever, but he's a great 1v1. He's a great 1v1 companion to have lying around. So, all right, now we have Contessa here. Contessa's great because she is a utility companion for her gallant defense, but she also does a pretty decent amount of damage as well because she can use Walk in Darkness combined with Backstab. So she's basically pressure and utility all rolled into one. Here's how I have her set up. Again, First Strike 3 is a must, but I also have Relentless, which could, also be exchanged for another Riposte, but that's how I have mine set up. Again, Alert, super useful for walking across traps. One of the few melee companions that is consistently used in 3v3s and 4v4s for good reason. So that's pretty much Contessa for you. And she has, good movement range. She has 6 movement range, just like a lot of other swashbuckler companions. Really solid companion to have all around. And that's how I recommend setting her up and using her. Alright, next let's have a look at the companion Bonnie Ann. Bonnie Ann can actually be set one of 2 ways and still be pretty effective. Now there's a reason why I don't go double tap 3. Double tap 3 basically relies on the base stat, in this case agility instead of accuracy. Now musketeers, they have really good accuracy, so why the heck would you want to change your base stat for hitting an ability to agility instead of accuracy. So that's the reason why you have double tap 2 instead of what a lot of people have with double tap 3. A lot of people just don't know about this. Burst Fire 2 is another really great ability to have. Quick Draw 3 for the increased damage, the 25% on initial hits. Really nice to have. Return Fire because you want to avoid having this double tap be a double tap 3. And also Bonnie Ann dodges a surprising amount of times. Now what you can do is you can exchange this Quick Draw 3 for an Overwatch 3. What this does is it changes your Bonnie Ann from being a counter musketeer unit to become a counter charge unit. Either way, she is also a damage carry, so that's really great to have her around for. Now, some people forego going for the last promotion on Bonnie Ann because when she gets her last promotion, she gets this here, the Stock Assault. And what's really annoying about this is that you could clutch on your Bonnie Ann because the accuracy is reduced from a Buccaneer, and the Buccaneer misses one of his chains and your Bonnie Ann barely survives, but then Bonnie Ann decides to hit the Buccaneer with a Stock Assault, and you end up getting her killed because of that. That's the main reason why some people forego doing the last promotion on Bonnie Ann. Like, the only good thing you may get from it is this ability here, which gives her a very low damage melee attack that doesn't chain. So that's pretty much the only perk of doing the last promotion. So be wary. I do not suggest doing the last promotion if you can help it. But Bonnie Ann's an all-around good companion, mostly for this ability here, the Scatter Blast in 3v3s and 4v4s, 2v2s as well. But this here heal is also super nice to have because it's infinite range. So she is a utility companion, a counter musketeer companion, a counter charge companion, and a damage carry all rolled into one. And that's probably the reason why she's pretty much been used in every meta for pretty much everything. Alright, here's a look at a companion that's very similar to Ratbeard in many respects. He's a tanky unit that's meant for blocking rushes and stuff like that. Here's a quick look at how I have him set up. I have him hold line 3, Vengeance Strike 3, and Cheap Shot. I don't usually recommend Cheap Shot on a companion, but it seems to work on Barnabus very well, especially since he's so tanky. Here's a look at how I have him set up epic-wise. I have him set up with rough, tough, accuracy, dodgy, all that good stuff. Now, he's not as good as Ratbeard in many situations because he doesn't have this clear the deck ability or this Buccaneer smash, and he does not have the option to get First Strike 3 like Ratbeard does. So Ratbeard is better in most situations, but if you want another companion that does pretty much the same thing except a little bit worse, you can use Barnabus. Now, sometimes people like to set their Barnabus with Vengeance Strike 3 and Bladestorm 3, and they like to have a hold the line instead of a cheap shot. Use what's best for you. I like this setup because of how I use them, and because I find as far as rushing companions go that specialize in rushing and doing a lot of damage, there are just a lot of better options. You have Quint, you have Goronado, you have Contessa, or heck, even El Toro. I have Nausicaa as well, so just a lot of better options. So I recommend having him set as mostly a companion for blocking the path of rushing units, which is how I have them set right here. So that's Barnabus for you. Alright, the next companion is also a rushing unit. We have Goronado here, and he is better in many respects when it comes to pure rushing and being able to dish out a lot of damage, depending on how you have him set especially. But here's a quick look at how I have mine set. Bladestorm 3 is definitely a must. Now, I would actually go with just Relentless 2. I currently don't have membership, so I can't like reset this guy, but I would give him Hold the Line 1, Relentless 2, and Bladestorm 3. That way he can block rushes to some degree, but he can also chain a lot. Now, what's great about Bladestorm 3, I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but it swaps the accuracy to dodge ratio with the base stat ratio. In the case of Buccaneers, it's strength. And not a whole lot of companions or pirates have very much strength aside from Buccaneers. So this is actually advantageous, especially since Buccaneers don't have a huge amount of accuracy in the first place. Not only that is Goronado has this guerrilla warfare, and what people don't know is that the guerrilla warfare goes through levies, basically the timed Buccaneer protection abilities. So it can be useful sometimes for chewing through that or hitting a group of enemies. But what really makes him useful is his vicious charge, which doubles his movement and, of course, reduces accuracy, which is the reason why he's a really good rushing unit because he can rush, he can chain, he can block rushes. He's an all-in-one. Now, the one downside that he does have is he only has Turn the Tide 1, which means that he doesn't get the same accuracy boost and half health that other Buccaneer companions do. So that's Goro for you. Alright, so here's another companion that's really good for rushing. In fact, it's better than both Goronado and Barnabus in many respects. And here's why. He is able to get Turn the Tide 2, and he also has some great chaining epics he can get. I have mine with Bladestorm 3 for the reasons I mentioned for Goronado. I also have Relentless 2 for chains as well, and I have Second Chance 2 because if you were to run up against a Musketeer with Overwatch, you are likely to get your accuracy reduced. So having that Second Chance gives you the ability to basically bounce back and possibly critical and get a full chain. Having two of them basically means that you could miss a total of 3 times and still get, a second chance. It's in the name. But here's a look at how I have him set. I'm not sure. Maybe it would have been a better idea to go with Dodgy 4 instead of Strength 4, but it's not a huge difference. That's one setup that Peter Quint has. Now, a lot of people like to use them for 1v1s or versus melee champions or teams in general. And they'll give him Vengeance Strike 3, a Bladestorm 2, Relentless 2, and that's how they'll have him set. So, really great companion for a lot of things. I use him primarily 1v1s versus privateers and musketeers, not much versus other classes, and I use them a whole lot in 3v3s and 4v4s. So, great champion. Alright, here is another companion, one of my favorites as well. It's an awful lot like Peter Quint, except that he doesn't come with the Whale's Might or a brutal charge that doubles his movement. So he's not very much of a rushing companion. But he does have the ability to get Vengeance Strike 3, Relentless 2, Blade Storm 2, and I'm pretty sure you could also go with some other epics, but this is pretty much the best option for him, considering he's not able to rush very well. So yeah, he's especially good on Privateer, but I have him here on Buccaneer as well. Here's a quick look at what I gave him talent-wise and what I gave him epic-wise. I really don't recommend anything else for this companion, and that's really all I have to say about him. Alright, this particular pirate used to be the one that my brother would watch me play, and he always insisted on buying a lot of companions that we never really needed much, but here's one of them. His name is Wagyu Sanjuro. Now you get the other companion called Kobe Yojimbo, and they're basically the same, except you can buy this one in the Crown Shop. Now, before Contessa came out, it was actually a really good strategy to go El Toro and double bulls. It was a lot of fun, but that's not really necessary anymore, or very effective in most cases. But I mean, he looks cool. I guess that's one reason you could get him. Here's a quick look at how I would have him set up. Now he has 2 solid attacks, which does make him better than Contessa in that regard, but he doesn't really have as much utility. He does have more epics. He can get another Riposte and another Relentless, whereas, Contessa doesn't have as many epics at all. But he's really slow, which is really his downside. He also does have Alert, so he's a good solid companion, But the problem is that there is a better option in most situations. So that's the main reason why both Kobe and Wagyu Sanjuro fall off so much. They're decent companions, they're just not as good as other options. So that's what I have to say about Wagyu and Kobe. All right, yet another companion that I don't really use much on Buccaneer, but I had lying around. He's pretty decent for a lot of situations, particularly PvE, because he chains more than just about any other um, Buccaneer companion in the game. He must have like a hidden critical stat or something. The only problem is he's quite squishy and he doesn't really do well with reactionary epics like First Strike and Venge Strike or anything like that, nor does he really have very many options when it comes to that. But here's a look at how I have him set. Bladestorm 3, obviously so he can swap out his accuracy and dodge stat for his base stat when it comes to landing hits on it. He has Relentless 2 for chains, of course a second chance in case he misses. Now I don't recommend having a first strike 2 because that often gets him killed, but he's a good solid companion. As you can see, he also has a Turn the Tide 2, and here's a look at how I have him set. Now, sometimes sometimes I like to go dodgy for, I have him set that way I think on my privateer. Um, but yeah, that's how I have Zang Cha set. Alright, here is a companion that's actually useful for once. Wu-Tang is good because he gives a version of El Toro's buff, the Esprit de Corps. But what's really great about his is that it actually lasts for 10 turns, and I just lost connection there. And what's really important on a Buccaneer is having buffs that last long, accuracy in particular. But not only does he have that, is he also has the rallying heal right there, the rally, which is another heal. It's another utility spell. Here's a quick look at how I have him set. I give him Bladestorm 3, Relentless 2. Now a lot of people also like to have a Witch Hunter instead of the second Riposte. That's another option, particularly if you're against a Soul Shroud Privateer. It can be quite useful. Um, but that's pretty much what he's useful for, mostly his buff. But here is how I have him set. He also can do a decent amount of damage, but his buff and his heal are pretty much the main reason why you'd want to use him. Alright, let's talk about the companion that has defined this meta in team battles in particular, Exeter. Also very good in a lot of 1v1 situations too. Now, Buccaneer, as I said before, not the greatest class for 3v3s and 4v4s. Yet, that being said, Exeter is still worthwhile having just in case you are in a situation where they want you to play, Buccaneers in one of those types of matches. So, what's really good about him and pretty much why he's good is he has the Maelstroms, which reduce speed by 50%, and he has the other ones that aren't nearly as good, and of course he has Musketeer's Medal. Now, this companion may not, at a glance, seem like it has much chaining potential, but it criticals a lot. Just as I said with Zang Cha, he has to have like some hidden critical stat somewhere, because there's no way he just criticals the way he does without it. So I do give him double tap 2 for that reason. Grit 3 so he can stun. He has a return fire and he actually dodges quite often, so that's quite good for him. And he has just 1 Overwatch. That being said, I do give him dodgy 4, and I do give him accuracy, rough, tough, 1 agility. So that's how I have my extra set. He's a great champion to buy on every class. I highly recommend buying him if you get the crowns. Alright, here's a quick blip about Old Scratch. Old Scratch pretty much only good as a counter Witch Doctor unit versus Witches, but if you do that, you want to give him Witch Hunter 3, obviously. But I didn't promote mine because, he's banned most of the time, and I don't really farm much on my Buccaneer. I usually use my Musketeer to farm, so, if you don't want to upgrade your Scratch, it's no big deal. That being said, we're going to move straight into a companion called Pepe Detorteau. You can buy him in the Crown Shop. He's pretty good, actually. There are some other options like Bonnie who you'd obviously want to use over him. But he's really great as counter musketeer because he does dodge and critical a lot. Um, I think he's one of the most underrated champions in the game. He does have rain of mortar shells and a super strike as well, and he does have 5 range just like Bonnie and some of the other good companions like Chantel Livingston. He doesn't have burst fire, which is really his shortcoming, but he is overall a fairly decent companion for 3v3s and 4v4s. So that's Pepe de Torto. All right, and here's the last champion in the guide, guys. It's called Billy the Kid. He's decent, I guess. He dodges a lot, so the return fire he has is quite nice. Quick draw 3 and burst fire. He's pretty much only used as counter musketeer, and only if you don't have anything better to use. I know some of you guys are probably going to use him, so that's the main reason why I included him in this guide. But just know that Body In is better. Exeter is better. I mean, heck, even Pepe is better for most instances. You have Nazca. You just have so many more options that you could use instead of this guy, particularly if you have grounds. But a lot of free-to-play players are going to want to have a look at this guy. So here's a look at how I have him set up. Here are his talents. Here are his epic abilities. And that pretty much ends the companion part of this guide. Alright, going back to the beginning of this video, there was the part where I talked about all the gear you could possibly have in the game for Buccaneer that was any good. I think it did a pretty good job of covering it. Guys, what's really important is that you're able to get the abilities you need to make your decks from the gear that you have. So I could get an Assassin Strike from my eye patch, my charm, my hat, my coat. It doesn't really matter where I get it from, right? What really matters is it gives me the setup that I want. Now here's a good setup for 4v4 and 3v3 when it comes to Buccaneer, and I'll start off with this one. It's also really good for PvE purposes as well. The reason why I use this for 3v3 and 4v4s is because you really don't need very many protections as a Buccaneer for 3v3s and 4v4s, especially when playing by standard rules. You usually have a supporting class like a privateer who can shield you. So your main job is to do damage. That being said, I packed 4 Assassin Strikes and I put 3 gap closers so that I am sure to pull a gap closer immediately and be able to charge down the field anytime I want. Highland Charge is a really great power to have as well. I do have 1 Valor Fortress and I do have 1 Valor Shield. After that I have hides because usually you hide directly after you do a hit in many cases so that you don't die. Here are of course some strength buffs right after that, and I have my Reckless Frenzy before. I'm going to go ahead and move this Kraken armor to the back because it's practically useless, but that's pretty much what I have set for 3v3s, 4v4s, and PvE, all rolled into one. Alright, now here's a quick look at what you might equip in most 1v1 situations, or at least as a 1v1 set. Actually, come to think of it, you may want to switch the weapons up a bit because particularly if you're against melee classes that can dodge very easily, follow-through weapon is not necessarily the best thing you can have. So let me put this into my deck real quick and we will get started. Alright, so I mentioned having a balance of powers earlier in this video. Valor's Fortress, it's nice to have 2 of those. It's also nice to have 2 Walk in Darknesses and at least 2 pieces of gear that give some type of heal. Now, in my case, I have a pet that I equip in 1v1s that gives a rally, so that's already covered. I also have a hat that gives it. So I have those. I have the 2 heals that I need. I have the 2 Valor Fortresses that I need. I also have the 2 Assassin Strikes that I need. So as you can see, I evenly distribute them throughout my deck so that I'm able to pretty much access what I need throughout the entire game. The reason this works particularly well on Buccaneer is because they really only have 1 page of powers. They only have like a little bit after that. So you'll pretty much always pull what you need. That's the great thing about this. Now you might change it up depending on who you're facing. If you're facing like another Buccaneer, for example, You might decide to um, equip a Triton's Chorus from any number of pieces of gear, like the hat, the boots, the coat. I have all of it. I have some, let's see, think you can get charms, rings, amulets, and stuff like that to give Triton's Chorus as well. You might equip that when you're playing a Buccaneer versus Buccaneer match. Um, Now, if you're playing against Swashbuckler, you definitely want to have 2 Valor Fortresses. That's pretty much a must. And honestly, I would not change the setup much at all. I would say versus Musketeers, you would actually want to equip the, where is it? The Axe of the Minotaur Lord for the extra chain and everything, and particularly since Musketeers don't tend to have much dodge. So that's one instance where I'd use the Axe of the Minotaur Lord instead. And that's my 1v1 power setup. Alright, so you're probably wondering exactly what you want to train on Buccaneer, so here's a look. Back to the power setup. You train your Ruse, your Valor's Shield, and you also train this right here, the Gunnery, which I think is required to train Ruse and the Valor Shield, all from the Privateer Trainer. As far as other stuff you want to train, you also want to go to the Swashbuckler Trainer and train Sneak Attack, and you want to train this hide right here, Walk in Shadows. Alright, so let's go ahead and go to the talents. Here is a look at everything you should have. You definitely want to train Spooky 2 from the Witch Doctor Trainer. Stabby 2 is required for Spooky 2, and Fast 2 is a must. I think you also have to train Stabby 2 in order to train Fast 2. You want to train Witch Hunter from the Witch Doctor Trainer in Devilfish Hollow, the hidden one. The thing about that particular trainer is that it changes every hour. So if it's a Musketeer one, it changes to a Witch Doctor one the next hour that you're there. Alright. So you want to train that. You want to also train Relentless. And you want to train Elusive too. And that's what you want to train for Buccaneer. Alright, so we finally made it to the last section of the video. How do you play Buccaneer? You want to play Buccaneer strategically. People think that since you're Buccaneer, you just charge in. Sometimes without a fort, sometimes with a fort, but that's not actually how you play Buccaneer a lot of the times. Buccaneer can sometimes be played defensively as well, particularly in team battles. You don't want to charge right away because there are a lot of units that can kill. And if you wait until, a lot of the companions are dead, you can charge in and dish out a lot of damage and recover pretty quickly and be a very strong end game. But the other thing is, if you're against a musketeer, for example, and they put a barricade up and camp in the corner and bomb, you just wait on the other side of the barricade patiently for all the bombs to wear out. Alright, just do common sense things like that. There are ways to get around Overwatch. You can use the wall. You can hide. You can reduce the Overwatch companion or pirate in many cases. Just do stuff like that that makes sense. You want to ensure your kills. Now, the thing is that people think, oh, Buccaneers, man, we should be relying on chains because we chain a lot. But that is actually not true. A lot of the times if you rely on RNG, you'll be very disappointed because RNG will screw you over pretty hard. Good solid hits are always worth it whenever you can. Ensure a kill. Always worth it. So that's pretty much what I have to say about playing Buccaneer. Just use good common sense, and even though you can chain and even though you can charge, use it wisely. Now, if you are a Buccaneer and you have some tips as well, be sure to put them down below in the comments. We'd love to hear from you, and hopefully I can add some of those ideas to my next guide. Until then, peace out.